So hi community, today we will see what happens in DevOps retrospect. So you have seen before what happens in testing retrospects or QA retrospects, but today we will see what happens in DevOps retrospect. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Yeah. So suppose a sprint is done. Okay. Suppose the sprint is done. Sprint one is done. Okay. So there have been tasks. As an example, what all tasks we will take? We will take some tasks like AWS server creation, okay, and there was some log implementation on cloud, okay, and here suppose there was some S3 bucket integration, okay, and suppose here it was the deployment with pipeline. Okay, and here what we will take? We will take some production issue. Okay, so suppose there was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 tasks was there. Okay. Okay. So next see in next slide. Yeah. Okay. So in sprint one, there were 5 tasks. Okay. So suppose under these 5 tasks, suppose the first task, which is AWS server creation. Suppose this AWS server creation done. It is done. Okay. It is marked as done on the Jira. Okay. Suppose this is done. Now what? So suppose this task is done, but maybe like few things might be missed. Maybe with this server creation we should have also integrated the logs, maybe, or some data rectification on automation of this server to automatic turn off and all. Okay, automatic turn off. Okay, so this part is done. Suppose, but these are like pending tasks along with it. But along with this, but in this sprint, we have taken only one task. First was create the AWS server creation. So there will be some dependable task which we will take this in the second sprint, right? So that we will discuss in retrospect. Okay, this task is done. Now what is the next step to automate or further, or how to automate the process, or how to make it better, right? So this is how we will discuss in the retrospect, like what all went correct and what all we have to do in the next sprint. Okay, so that we will discuss in the retrospect as well, and of course after retrospect we will have the plan and story points and all those things. So that will be, suppose, first thing. Same goes with the, suppose, log creation. So I'll again take the example here only. Log creation. Okay, so in the log creation, suppose we have to set up the ELK. Suppose we have to set up the ELK Kibana setups and all. So maybe while doing it or installing it, or while you were set up, like you were doing the setup for the Kibana and the Logstash. Yeah. So suppose in this we have to create the ELK. Suppose, okay, so there was some, you tried that in whole sprint, maybe like it was suppose like of 2 weeks, and you tried that, but still you didn't get that. So maybe then you will decide on the retrospect like what all things were not matching. Suppose there was some issue where whichever the ELK version you were trying to install, maybe not compatible on the CentOS or the Ubuntu, whichever you were trying, maybe some configurational issues were there. Due to that, you were not able to achieve the implementation of logs and Kibana. So for that, then you will take this to the next sprint, right? So you will take this to the next sprint. Next sprint. Okay. So yeah, that's how. So this is the, suppose like this is the second thing, okay, in the retrospect like we discussed. Third, like suppose S3 bucket implementation. Okay, so we will just create a new slide. Oh, sorry. Okay, so now S3 bucket implementation. So S3 bucket implementation, suppose as we have discussed, like versioning and all you have enabled. So yeah, so like S3 bucket implementations and all you have done properly, and now retrospect in that, like you have completed the task end to end. So we will mark as like done on the Jira as well, right? The touch, yeah. So that's how it was. Like what was that? S3 bucket, right? S3 bucket. Okay, so S3 bucket is done. You have marked as done on Jira, and here what you have created S3 bucket. Then you have enabled the versioning. In the versioning, what happens? The current data will get override. Current data will get override, and then you have given the keys and the URIs to the developer from where they want to actually give the data, and which data needs to be saved on the, give the URI in their implementation where the data needs to be saved on the S3. So this is like third task is done. So we will move forward. Okay. What was the fourth? Fourth is like deployment with pipeline. Suppose there was a deployment with pipeline. Okay. So in deployment with pipeline, suppose it was a Jenkins. So you have done it, you have set up a server, set up a pipeline for that server already will be in place for the Jenkins, and then you had created the multi-branch pipeline or any kind of pipeline whichever you want to proceed with, and then there you have configured everything whatever needed, as an example like any Docker or anything you needed, right? So those all things you have done, and everything is working, the pipeline is correct, right? So then that means this task is also marked done on Jira, and the pipeline has been done. Okay, so third four tasks, these four are completed, right? So here we will take some status. This task is completed, but pending task of automations will go to next sprint. This is not yet completed, but the configurational things are there, so this will also go to next sprint. This is done, this is also done, and last is, yeah, some production issue. Let's see. Okay, so new slide we'll see. Okay, so last is like production issue. Okay, so what happens? You have deployed something on the last sprint, maybe at the time of closure. You have deployed something. Okay, in that you had created a server and deployed, or anything happens. Okay, so that it has some, this server is working almost 90% correctly, but there is some issue in the production where the server is getting filled a lot of traction. Whenever the lot of traction is coming, some issues are happening in this on the production side as well, which is resulting in some cause and some business losses. So for that, like what all things you have done, what all you have rectified, like you or maybe your team member, so in that production issue, whether it is resolved, and if it is resolved, when we can deploy and we can fix this in the next deployment, or you have already fixed, then when you are going to deploy in the next down cycle, and if you have zero downtime, then when you are going to uh, deploy it. So whatever happens, it depends on the organizations. So yeah, so that is, suppose this task is completed almost, but yeah, also you can work on the some learning some points from here to the next next time whenever you will be setting up the servers, how you can automate it better and all. So those all things you also discuss in the retrospect. So what all went correct in this, and what all the issues you have actually faced, so how can you make it better. So this is just an example, like what all things we discuss in the retrospect of the DevOps. The same way we discuss in the developer retrospects or the QA retrospects, the same way we have our own setups of DevOps retrospect, where we discuss as per the sprint if it is going on. So as the task wise, when we take the uh, tickets or anything, and we estimate it and then we work on it. So yeah, so that's how the retrospect works. And whenever the retrospect points are mentioned, retrospect, then in the sprint plan you, then in the next sprint plan, you take these things and go forward with the next action of plan. Okay, so that's how DevOps retrospect works. Thank you so much.